Here's some information to help you as you go through practice test 3. You should have already worked as many of the problems as you can. Now you can check your work and make sure you're answering correctly. Starting with the multiple choice parts, 1 through 10. Remember, with multiple choice, you're always looking for the best possible answer. You might think, well, there's something else you could do here, or that's not the complete information, but pick the best possible answer. For example, number 1 shows a one-step equation, x plus 82 equals 10. To solve this equation, you add 10 to both sides? No. You want to get the variable x by itself. To get variable x by itself, you would have to take away this positive or plus 82. Subtract 82 is not one of the answers. So the correct answer to number 1 is D, none of the above. Number 2 is a two-step equation. If you just look at the equation without looking at the answer choices, you should realize you would have to add 24 to both sides, and you would also have to divide by the coefficient 2 for the last step. Looking at the answer choices, the only one represented there is A, add 24. You can look at B, C, and D, but you'll see that the only answer that applies is A, add 24. Number 3, a one-step equation where you have a coefficient 30. There's nothing being added or subtracted with the variable term, so the only thing to do in number 3 is divide by 30. That makes the correct answer choice C. In number 4, another two-step equation. Be careful here. We know that we're looking for inverse operations. If you want to isolate your variable x, you have to do the inverse operation of what is in the original equation. I know that we have subtraction here, but that doesn't mean I'm going to add to both sides. The number that I want to get rid of here is the number 3. 3 is positive. So to solve an equation like number 4, the first step is to subtract 3. If you look carefully, you'll see that's answer choice B. In number 5, to solve this equation, 2 things you have to do. Subtract 11 from both sides. Also divide by -6 on both sides. Neither one of those answers is represented in number 5. So once again, the correct answer has to be D, none of the above. When you get to number 6, anytime you have 2 numbers that have the same absolute value, that means the number's the same, but opposite signs, one negative and one positive, they would add up to 0. Numbers like -99 and +99 are called additive inverses of each other. Additive inverses are any 2 numbers that add up to 0. 10 and -10. 1/2 and -1/2. You put them together, you get 0. Those are called, once again, additive inverses. There's only one number that's the additive identity, and that number is 0. So for number 7, the correct answer is C. The additive identity is 0. Memorize that fact because you'll hear it again. Number 8, 1/2, is an example of a number that is a rational number, C. It's not an imaginary number. We don't study imaginary numbers in Algebra 1. You'll see them in Algebra 2. It's not an irrational number. It's a number that is written comparing 2 numbers, 1/2, 1/2. That's an example of a ratio or a rational number. Integers are numbers like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or the negatives of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, on into infinity. The number has to be written as a fraction or a decimal, then that number is called a rational number. In number 9, we're looking at the role that -4 plays in this equation. And -4 could be a coefficient in another equation, but in this example of an equation, -4 is your constant. -4 is a number that never changes. If there's no variable next to it, then that number is a constant. In number 10, you're looking at an equation and deciding what role does 4x have here. 4x is the variable and its coefficient, and we call those two together the variable term. So the answer to number 10 is A. Make sure you're familiar with the vocabulary so you can answer vocabulary questions, and so that when I use these phrases in class, you know the meaning of what I'm saying. When you solve equations, the two steps for these kinds of equations that we're doing on this page are to isolate your variable term. That means you'll add or subtract first, then divide by the coefficient for your last step. I'm not going to do all of them. I'm going to start with number 13 because it has a special situation I want you to remember. We've seen this before though. You find your variable. You want to get your variable by itself. If anything is added or subtracted with the variable, get rid of that first. That means the positive 4 over here on the right side of the equation with the x needs to go. And I can make it go away by taking 4 away from both sides. Don't let the sign after the variable, or excuse me, after the 4 fool you. You look at it this way, this 4 is a positive number. Subtract 4 from both sides. And I'm not saying that minus sign doesn't matter. It's going to be real important. Because when I write the next step, -20 minus 4 is -24, equals 4 minus 4 is 0. It's gone. 4 and minus 4 are additive inverses. That leaves me not with x, but with negative x. When x is a negative, has a negative sign in front of it, no number, you know it's an invisible -1. So divide by that coefficient, -1. And that will change the sign on the answer to +24. Make sure you review these steps, paying close attention to the correct operation to solve and what each line of the equation looks like. When you get to number 19, there are fractions involved. But remember, this number is just a coefficient, like any other coefficient. And the TI Inspire will take care of the arithmetic. You don't have to worry about improper fractions or finding common denominators. We talked about how to put these questions in the calculator. So let's move forward. Whatever this coefficient is, I'm going to divide by it. So I'll be dividing by -5 over 4. It's a little tricky to show this, but you're used to showing your work, so that's very important. And that will cancel these two out. Any number divided by itself is just 1, and 1a is what I want to have left. When you put 95 divided by 72 into the TI Inspire, and divide it by -5 over 4, the result will be improper fraction -19 over 18. When you get an Inspire in your hand, you can check it out and compare. All right, we're going to do 3 more. Here's number 20. Another situation with a mixed number this time. Remember that mixed numbers have to be put in the calculator as 4 plus 11 over 12. There's more to it than that, because when we subtract -4 and 11/12 from both sides, you have to remember to insert some parentheses right here. You don't really have to write them as you're showing the work, but in the calculator, try it and make sure you get the 4 and 11/12 inside parentheses and the minus sign on the outside. Since that's the only step in this problem, doing the operation on the left side of the equation will give you 17 over 4. A is now by itself on the right side of the equals, and you're finished. You can review that again if you're not sure, and be ready to ask questions when you see me again about what I did there. 24 is another two-step equation. First, isolate the variable term, negative 8n, by getting rid of this minus 12. The inverse of minus 12 is to add 12. Leaves me with negative 8n equals 0. It just so happens that negative 12 is the additive inverse of positive 12 on both sides here. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. 0 is an answer like any other number. It's just that when you divide 0 by negative 8, it's still going to be 0. 0 can be an answer. You got one more here, another two-step equation. Look at this one carefully. Find your variable term. Ask what's happening to the variable term. Think about what you're going to do first. You have a constant negative 1 over here with the 4k. I want to get rid of negative 1. So I'll add 1 to both sides. Negative 17 plus 1 is negative 16. That leaves me not with 4k, but with negative 4k. Now I'm ready for the second step. Divide by the coefficient. If your coefficient is a negative number, that's what you have to divide by. Negative 16 divided by negative 4 is positive 4 equals k. Other than the places where I showed what I did to solve, here and here, each line of my equation should be a true statement. Complete equation, so you have equals all the way down. What you need to remember is that you, the student, should be concentrating on how to solve equations. Think about what operation and what number. Let the calculator do the calculating. There's no reason to make arithmetic mistakes when you have a calculator. So good luck on test 3 tomorrow.